close with Sister Tej, interviewing Brother Johnny Achi from Arab Americans for Syria, discussing the current situation on the ground, as well as Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the U.S.'s role in using Western media propaganda to keep militias from 83 countries inside Syria to destabilize the Assad government, which is supported by Russia, which provides anti-terrorist troops in Syria, and how their successes with fighting off these Western-backed terrorist groups is driving Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. crazy.
Yeah. You better get your hands off of Syria. Don't believe all the media hysteria. They say the whole country is against Assad. What about every single pro-government march? What about the character of the opposition? What kind of government do they really envision? It's like Libya 2.0 if you ask me. The CIA is now just sitting and laughing. They take popular discontent and spin it. Want to see the Arab revolution diminished? What about Palestine support from Damascus? Will that still remain if the country is captured? Clear that the Zionists support the rebels. Want to see the Baptist state just leveled. Who really benefits is the question to ask. We should know much better from the most recent past.
This is Sister Tej, and I would like to welcome back to Freedom Now Brother Johnny Achi, who's with the Arab Americans for Syria. Welcome, Brother Johnny.
Thank you, Sister Tej, for having me again on the show.
Thank you for your great work. Can you give us an update on what's happening in Syria?
Absolutely. Sister Tej, in the last 1 week, there had been a lot of events taking place, especially on the ground, which expedited the war for peace talks and hopefully maybe ceasefire. Since actually this end of September 30th, when the Syrian government asked the help of the Russian army to intervene in Syria to fight terrorism, we've seen in the last few days the Syrian and the Russian military successfully closed a very important corridor. It's called the Azaz Corridor. It's a narrow strip of land connecting Turkey to the rebel forces or the terrorist forces in northern Syria, in Aleppo, which is the second biggest city in Syria. It was being used by as a major supply route for the terrorist forces, smuggling arms into Syria via Turkey. And without this corridor, they have no leverage over the Syrian army on the ground. Now, with that, the U.S. Secretary of State, of course, John Kerry, desperately now wants the peace talks to continue, to resume, because he knows the covert war is on a losing streak. And I think since 5 years I've been coming on the show, I think I am never more optimistic than today that I think the end is near for many reasons. One of the reasons is, again, the Syrian army is moving very strong and the ISIS is collapsing. ISIS are running for the borders, to Turkish border. Second, it seems that the Turkish and Saudi Arabia are not giving up. The U.S. has bet on the wrong horse and they backed a loser, and it seems like they have to back up. However, it seems that their clients, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, are not giving up on the regime change fantasies. So I think we're going to see tremendous changes. The Turkish and the Saudis are threatening for a war intervention or a ground intervention in Syria, of course, on the pretext of fighting ISIS, the same group that they invented and built. So I don't know. It seems like NATO and the U.S. are not going to have any of it. They know that the Russians are serious about this. The Russians are expecting to have a ceasefire, but Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed that it would not stop the airstrikes until complete defeating of the terrorist organization on the ground. So ceasefire, then it really wouldn't make any sense because all the fighting forces on the ground are Nusra Front and ISIS, which are extreme terrorist groups. There is no more Syrian moderate rebels. I need to mention again, it's nothing but a myth. The two methods, actually, that the United States government have carried out for the last 4 or 5 years in regards to terrorism in the Middle East. The first myth is that the U.S. is engaged in a war against terrorism since 2014, and I can assure you, before the Russian intervention or the Russian actually participation by the Syrian government request, the U.S. had done nothing in about 18 months today. I go visit Syria. I speak to Syrians every day. And the U.S. campaign, or what they call coalition against terrorism in Syria, all they did is fostered ISIS. ISIS got stronger. ISIS gained more ground in Syria. So only in the last 4 months when the Russian airstrikes taking place is that we see ISIS being defeated. So there is that one myth that it's fighting terrorist groups, and the second myth that there is moderate groups that they are supporting. So it's supporting sending arms to one group while claiming to be fighting the other groups. You ask anyone in Syria, what are these moderate groups? Where are they? They do not exist. They are Nusra Front. They are the Army of Islam. They are the Islamic State. They are the same groups that the United States doesn't know whether to arm or to fight. So I think now, again, the end game is near for the Syrian crisis, or I hope, because it's looking like it might grow into a much bigger conflict, a regional conflict and a world conflict. And I think no one is willing to go that far. And I think only then will we might see an end to this.
Can you discuss the recent attack that killed 28 people and injured 61 people that happened in Ankara, in Turkey, and Turkey's unfounded claims that the Syrian Kurds are responsible? And with these claims, what role is that playing in the Western media propaganda campaign against the Assad government?
Okay, a very good point. First of all, we have nothing but sympathy for all the victims of any terror attack anywhere in the world, whether it's in Syria or anywhere else. Obviously, the terrorist groups who are leaving Syria are disappointed from the West, and they are going back to Germany and to France and to Turkey and to the United States for feeling being abandoned. There is over 200,000 militants, mercenaries, who've entered Syria in the last 4 years with the help of the CIA by Turkey. So for Turkey to say that Syrians or Kurds who've never used car bombing or suicide bombing, we know who uses suicide attacks. We know it's the Wahhabist Salafist ideology backed by Saudi Arabia. We know the Saudis are the missionary state behind the Salafist ISIS. So for them to blame the Kurds who are on, I tell you, the Kurds are resisting the Turkish in northern Syria. They're resisting ISIS and back the Turkish-backed forces in northern Syria. But I don't want to say it's a false flag terror in Ankara. I believe it's too big for anyone to do such a thing, such a terror act. But I think the finger should be pointed at ISIS. ISIS have carried out similar attacks, over hundreds of them in Syria, and they've done it before in southern Turkey. They've done it. If they could do it anywhere in the world, they would. Of course, it's another pretext for intervention in Syria. Now, they might be using it to continue. They've been shelling northern Syria for the last 4, 5, 6 days, and this will only continue, give them more reason to continue to shell the Kurds in northern Syria. They're preparing for, again, a ground war. They're talking about it. The Saudis are talking about it. Of course, the Syrian government and the Syrian army and the Russian army are not going to have any of it. So it works into their plans on continuing to shell northern Syria. They cannot have these ISIS forces defeated after 5 years. Their dreams of a regime change in Syria are collapsing, and they are trying to find any reason to continue this war. Again, the truth is there's no guarantee of peace, but in order to eventually arrive at peace, we at least need to learn the truth. And the truth is there is no civil war in Syria. The truth is there is no popular revolt in Syria, and there is definitely no internal sectarian conflict in Syria. There is a war in Syria between good and evil. The Syrian Arab army, which composed of over 500,000 Syrians, it's mandatory to serve an army. So it's made out of the people. And they are the ones who are fighting this ISIS, Wahhabist, Salafist regime. So how could the Sunni be fighting the Sunni and call it a sectarian war? It's the Syrian army who, unfortunately, I want to go back and say, yes, it is a popular, propaganda war is part of every war throughout history. But I think this war on Syria relied on such a level of mass disinformation not ever seen in living memory. They made a popular president, a reformist, an eye doctor, a well-mannered doctor to be the new evil in this world. They made the Syrian army, this Syrian army was made of the people who did not enter Syrian Syria, but after it was taken by the rebels, by the terrorists, after the cries of the residents of the cities, after massacres were carried out, they entered. This army now, we hear nothing but that they did kill nothing but civilians in the last 5 years. So the truth needs to be told that there is a war between evil and good, and we need to be on the side of good. It's enough. It's time for the Syrian people to have peace We need to defeat ISIS. We need to stand all together as one and just pray for peace.
Well, we thank you, my brother, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your great work and your update.
The USA, we know they scheme and manipulate, stepping away, but they not messing with Syria today.